the Acura Integra Type-S, the much-loved nameplate of the Integra with the hottest version. But this car's intrigued us because we really weren't huge fans of the reintroduced Integra. I mean, it was good, but we didn't feel like it was a standout. But along comes this Type-S, and it is, well, the luxurious version of the Civic Type-R.
I've been wondering why the Acura Type-S needed to exist, because it is a different clientele. Acura is going after a different market. It's not designed for track use, whereas the Civic Type-R is.
But the issue with the Civic Type-R is the fact that this list price about $45,000, but it'll be like winning lottery if you found one for that. The markups on these is kind of insane, and so as a result they are selling for $5,000 to $10,000 above list price, which is firmly in a market of the executive luxury sedan.
Well, this is the Audi S3, a $50,000-ish luxury sports sedan. The S3 is the car that Acura benchmarks specifically. It's number one on their chart of benchmark cars they compare their Type S to. This is between $50,000, $53,000, depending on how you spec it. It is available with the adaptive dampers, and this car does have them. I can totally see you choosing an S3 over the other two. But we can't leave the Civic Type-R out either. So all three of them are along because it's important to understand what are you getting if you spend $55,000 plus, somewhere in there. Everything about them is pretty much the same, except for how they drive.
Great cars, great roads, and all the reasons we love to drive.
Road trips, comparisons, test drives, and podcasts. This is Everyday Driver.
It's a lot of power. This little S3 will break the 5-second barrier on 0 to 60. Now, part of that is the benefit of the dual clutch, but it's also because Volkswagen's just done a good job with this powertrain.
306 horsepower, 295 pound-feet of torque. Clearly, it's enough to make this thing walk the other two cars, which are 300 to 400 pounds lighter than this. Almost 3,600 pounds in this thing.
This is very quick. In fact, the other two in just power have trouble keeping up with this, even though this, on paper, is down on power.
It's amazing to think that any of these cars have a 2-liter turbo engine and they make this kind of power. But you stand on this, even up to its 6,500 RPM redline, it's still pulling hard. And the fact that it's down at less torque than the other two cars, the engine is the sweet spot here. But the other part of the car is the fact that it's only offered with a 7-speed dual clutch.
I wonder how this S3 would benefit from a manual transmission. I know it's not going to get one, I know that ship has sailed, but the other two add so much engagement by having one that I wonder how much this sensation is just muted by not.
Yes, the Golf R needs to be brought up. Its practical twin already has it. Why couldn't the manual add the personality that this car absolutely needs to push it over the edge for me? Offering it here would make it far more interesting.
Now, in spite of that extra speed that this car seems to have, I do feel like it has to find itself more than the other two. You have to wait on its turbo to get serious and spool up and give you all the power in a way that the other two seem to never suffer from.
It's not cracking off the shifts quick enough for my taste. It's still got that Audi just ever so slight pause.
This Audi seems to gather itself for a second and then really give you all that it's got.
This is the most powerful Type-R Honda has ever built. 315 horsepower, 310 pound-feet of torque. VTEC turbo, baby. This car is so quick. This only makes 5 horsepower less than the Type-S. Okay, gosh, you're down on power. No, you're not. You get the same amount of torque.
Interestingly, though, the torque is delivered a little bit different. This, in the mid-range, doesn't quite have the punch of power that the Type-S does. It feels more powerful. Now, Once you get the Audi on boil, it feels more powerful than both of these. Otherwise, it doesn't feel like these. These feel very light on their feet. You can absolutely just access the power kind of anytime you need, in spite of it being a little Turbo 4. I cannot get over how easy this car is to drive quickly. Every time I'm in it, I'm just astonished at how light and agile and willing it feels.
Both the Type-R and the Type-S have rev match for their same transmission, 6-speed manual transmissions.
You can get into the menus, you can turn it off, which is nice. What kind of driver are you? What are you worried about? Do you want to do it yourself? I just decided I would just talk to you with the rev match on so you can hear it work. See?
The clutch engagement feels light, but not too light. It feels substantial.
What I like though is that this is the bones for that Type-S. All the stuff that makes this great, those parts are in the Type-S, just tuned to be a little bit less hair on fire.
It's crazy to think that the Civic Type-R is built in Japan and the Acura is built on the same line in Marysville, Ohio as the TLX and TLX Type-S. Same car, right? Well, no, it's not. This was developed by the same person that built the GSR engine. You remember the second generation Integra GSR? That engine with the VTEC, same person worked on this car. It is now up to 320 horsepower, still 310 pound-feet of torque. It's 5 more than the Civic Type-R. Can I feel that? I want to say no. What Acura has done here is give you earlier torque at mid-throttle. You're right. I like it when car manufacturers make a claim and then it feels like it matches what they're saying.
Some dynos have shown that to be the case. This has a little bit more usable torque band, and as a result, you can find power in the middle range, the 3,000 to 4,000 RPM range. When you're not really caning the car, this is a place where the Integra feels like it's got a little bit more to offer.
That throttle map is part of the difference of the Type-S that makes this go after a different customer. This car always feels like it's ready to go.
Heavy throttle out of a corner or accelerating all of a sudden might make you go, oh, that's right, only the front half of this car is working, in a way that the Type-R seems to hide even more of the time.
I would have thought that the Type-S would be all-wheel drive and the Civic Type-R would be the front-wheel drive version, because Acura has made it known that the nameplate should be synonymous with super handling all-wheel drive. But yet they didn't for the Acura, which means this is the only car in Acura's lineup that remains front-wheel drive.
But while this reveals itself to be front-wheel drive, it never reveals that to be a problem. In fact, I feel like this is a better sorted front-wheel drive than the front-wheel drive tendencies of the S3.
Ho, ho, ho! Little personality there, a little torque steer. Oh, still going on. And I'm still amazed that both the Civic Type-R and the Type-S are only front-wheel drive. That is how they come.
All right, Audi, okay. This is a compelling little thing. I do like it. This is a surprise. I've driven the Golf R. I like the Golf R enough. Something about this little sedan package is a little more intriguing for me. Now, while this is technically an all-wheel drive car, it's actually front-wheel drive most of the time.
Why is this the Haldex system and the Golf R has the cool twin wet clutches with the torque vectoring diff? But the only time you really start to feel it is through corners. Most of the time, this kind of operates like a front-wheel drive car, which is why it's here.
So it is a reactive system. It's not an all-time system. It's not a proactive system. It just reacts when it thinks you're going to need the back half. Now, that doesn't take away the fact that this is very capable, but it does take away any kind of advantage or party trick that you would think this would have by being all-wheel drive while the others are only front-wheel drive. When pushed, I feel like this S3 is more front-wheel drive than the other two. I know the back half is involved, occasionally you can feel it, but this has a front-wheel drive compact car feel to it more of the time than the Type-R or the Type-S.
I feel like Audis have gotten a little bit too sanitized or clinical, despite the fact it being quite capable. Corners like this, absolutely. Chuck it in, add power, car rotates. But right there, I'm feeling quite a lack of precision.
I'm pleasantly surprised at how agile this is, though. This is very fun to drive, it's very capable, and it doesn't feel like it weighs anything close to 3,600 pounds. It feels very compact. In fact, it feels kind of as small as the Type-R, even though that's 300 pounds less.
It's fast, and it has all the things that those other cars do in terms of stats. The recipe is pretty much the same, but there's not a lot of playfulness here built into the car.
Both of the other two feel more interesting to drive when you get to a corner. This is very capable. It's a bit muted in its responses, and it feels like I'm sitting a little bit too high, but there's no question it can do it.
Now I will add, this is running on Michelin Pilot All Seasons. It does not have the same tires as the other two cars. Tires absolutely matter. But let's just say it's an equal playing field because it does have the all-wheel drive. It's like Audi forgot that people were competing with this car. So it's just enough, and in some cases it's not enough.
The fact that it is all-wheel drive isn't something that you feel behind the wheel as, oh, thank God, what a great help. Some of you are saying all-wheel drive is required if you get any kind of weather, and I defy that, because what you really need is good tires. Tires are more important than drive wheels. Here in the Salt Lake City area, where we get all kinds of weather, we have seen that time and time again. But dynamically, from behind the wheel, I just don't feel like this benefits from being all-wheel drive. It's fine that it is, but based on the other two, I just don't need it.
The Civic Type-R has been designed and engineered and developed and built in Japan specifically for track use. It's been tested on tracks around the world. The entire point of this car is to go tracking with it, and I can totally see it. Thanks to this owner who autocrosses this car 2 days before we had it, he did 35 sessions in a row, and it feels no different than the other brand new Civic Type-Rs that we've driven. It feels crisp and solid and tight.
This is the lightest of the three cars here, just under 3,200 pounds, which in the modern time is a lightweight. I cannot believe this car doesn't weigh more than that. Most cars you'll find these days weigh 3,500, 3,600 and above.
But already the steering feel is lighter than the Acura. It's the same rack, 11.6:1 steering ratio, which is rather quick, Alpha Julia kind of quick. The big difference here could be the wheels, because these wheels are quite light. These are OEM wheels from the dealer. But the steering feel here feels different. It's a lighter touch here. It does feel track ready.
Steering is incredibly immediate and very precise. There's not a lot of feel here. I don't really feel like I'm communicating with the tires and I know what the tires are dealing with, which is probably good because they're doing everything.
Honda decided to make this a square stance, but also what's so crazy is the front track is wider than the rear. And coming through these corners, you nail the throttle and it just yanks you through.
Once I give it power, the tires should give up. Granted, they're 265 width, which is quite wide for this car. The rotation here is excellent and very fast. Occasionally, you can catch it out. Occasionally, you know, yes, okay, this is a front-wheel drive car, that's not ideal. Who cares?
I do wish for more. I want more steering feel, but I know we're dealing with a lot of weight over the front and we're dealing with front-wheel drive only. But what I do love with all three of these cars is that you've got individual mode, except where the individual button is on the Acura Type-S, you've got R+ mode. Don't you dare touch that button unless you're on track. If you decide to, there should be an end-user license agreement, or maybe a gift card to your local chiropractor, because you touch that button, you're going to be beat into submission on a road like this. The smallest undulations, you're gonna feel.
If you are a person who commutes, these adaptive dampers are pretty cool. They do have noticeable changes when you push them through the different modes, but it's just constant bounce, and that's just not going to work for most people. So I'm going to go down to Sport, which is similar to the Sport Plus setting on the Type-S.
Do I dare touch it? See, your instrument panel changes. That gives it the personality that is different from the other two cars. I can instantly feel more torque through the wheel. Wow! That changes the input for the wheel, and I'm feeling the power through the wheel. The smooth track use, I can see it for autocross, and I really like that this is the biggest differentiator between the two cars, because now it does turn this into a race car, whereas the Acura doesn't have that.
No complaints. None. Zero. Handling is superb. Understeer feels non-existent. The turn-in is so sharp on this car and immediate. This is such a victory of chassis tuning. I'm a little astonished by how well Honda has done this car. You forget which wheels are driven because it doesn't matter. This is a fantastic vehicle to just take and push hard. The problem is when you're not pushing that hard. If you want to use it as a daily, if you'd like to use it as a commuter, which is how we're talking about these, this asks a lot more of you because it isn't all that nice. And it does have an aggressive ride, really, no matter which mode you're in.
Well, I've talked about for a long time, as much as we've liked the 10th generation Civic, I always thought you could cut the back wing off and have kind of a stealthy executive sedan, sports sedan. Acura has built that car.
This car feels a little bit bigger than the Type-R, which doesn't make any sense actually, because it's only about 40 pounds heavier and it has the same wheelbase. I'm going to attribute that to the fact that the seats don't hold you as well and the suspension is a little bit softer, and because it's a different market segment. This is not designed to be your track car first. This is designed to be your daily first, but they handle about the same. This has all the same suspension parts as the Type-R does. It just has a slightly different suspension setup. There's less rebound on the dampers. They've done a few things to just change the car to make it feel more luxury and a little less track.
Another difference is the tires. The tires for this car were specially developed for the Acura Type-S, and they are a different compound and tread pattern than the ones on the Civic Type-R. It's meant for this high-speed, wonderful canyon driving. It's made for what you use your sports car the most.
Now, I do feel like that the softer setup of this has revealed a little bit more front-wheel drive tendency than I find in the Type-R. I do feel more body roll here than I do in the Type-R. Some of that is the car, some of that is the change to these lesser seats that are not nearly as aggressive as the ones in the Type-R.
But if the seats were so aggressive on this, I think it would turn off the clientele. I think it would kind of make people back away and think, well, that's just a track car. It can, but it's not. I see it now. I didn't think that Honda and Acura needed two of the same car, but this truly is a different feeling. We've talked about in the past on the Civic Type-R, we wanted heated seats. Well, it's got it here. We wanted power seats. Well, the Type-S has that.
This Type-S does have a slightly different steering calibration than the one on the Type-R, and you can feel that. This doesn't feel quite as immediate as the Type-R does. This feels like it's been softened up to be a street car. Not in a bad way, not in any way where you're just like, oh, this got sloppy now. You will still really surprise yourself with the dynamics of the Type-S. It's just a little more usable in an everyday kind of way.
I really appreciate the steering feel on this. It's not the most direct. I mean, there's a lot of weight over the nose of both of these cars. You can't get away from that. Look at this corner. I can just add power. And it is like throwing a dart that turns. That's pretty cool.
I do think the Type-R feels even easier to drive fast than this does, but if you don't have the Type-R for back-to-back comparison, you're not going to think it's possible to be better than this.
It's a high-performance enthusiast car. There is no shame when you show up, either at Cars and Coffee or your friends going for a drive, and they all bring some hot stuff, you will be probably right up their trumpets, but maybe in many cases leading them. This car is so good.
The Type-R is like that superstar athlete in high school or college that is all brash and talent, and you cannot believe how good they are, but be careful because they might wreck your house. This is that athlete after they get some sort of manager and person to worry about their perception and their reputation. That's the Type S. It's that same athlete with a stylist.
It seems like every other manufacturer throughout the years now have always tried to see what Audi's doing with their lights, with their signature look, to try to make it look aggressive but still luxurious. Audi still succeeds, even on their smallest sedan, to make it look both. It does look beautiful, and it's not sensual in any way. It's very severe, but it does look very high-end. It looks more expensive than the other two.
In this car, you spent that same over $50,000, $55,000 in this case, and you got things that make this feel like a luxury car. Of course, you got the Audi badge, if that matters. This is a German luxury car. It's not masquerading out of somewhere else, so that has history. But more importantly, you got these powered seats, which of course have heating, but they also have memory, so you and your spouse can set different things up. It is a luxury car after all.
I like the very driver-focused, very futuristic kind of feel that Audi has developed here. I like the screen that is built in here. I like the instrument panel design is really creative and very Audi-like and quite interesting.
We have dedicated HVAC buttons. We do have a main screen and an actual digital cluster. All of this is very readable. It works very well. It does have a panoramic sunroof and 3-zone climate control. These are things that start to feel like, shouldn't I have that at this price point? And the Audi brings them all.
I also really like the door handles. It doesn't need to be an entire loop. Yes, this is brilliant. The steering wheel and the stuff that you only should touch feel okay. Everything else just feels like a notch above Volkswagen, maybe. It's too plasticky. It looks good to your eye, but anything beyond that, it starts to be very cheap.
Like a lot of Volkswagen, some of the plastic down low is where they figured out some cost savings, but all of the stuff you see and interact with feels a whole class above even the Type S.
The finish here on the instrument panel does not match the finish on the doors. It's a painted piece, but it doesn't feel good. The Bentley commercial with the Russian girl, Bentley, Audi, you start to feel things and it feels suddenly cheap. It doesn't feel honest, and I'm so sick of this giant piano black. I just wish the feel of all these materials felt higher end and more expensive than they actually looked. I like the stance of the car. I love this car in not white, and I do like the new Civic styling. It looks like a rear-wheel drive car just like the Acura. It's got that real wide stance. It's got nice fender flares. There's some really beautiful surfaces.
The Civic just wins on seats. Have I mentioned that? These seats are brilliant. They feel a little soft to the touch. You think, oh, these are not really going to have much support. It's like sitting in a hug.
When you get in the car, these lateral side bolsters here, they feel a little squishy. And then the more time you spend here, you think, oh, Honda knows what they're doing. There's still so much support here. I like that this is track ready. You can see the belt holes here in the seat.
The problem is manual seats with no heating or cooling. For a car that's this expensive, that feels noticeably absent. Now, if you're only using it as a track car, what do you care? If you're thinking about it as a daily commuter or you live in a cold climate, that is a much bigger issue. And also, do you share this car with a spouse? If you do you want to crank on the manual seat all the time?
The materials still feel honest, but it's still Civic. So it has a less expensive look, but it's not cheap. And that's just it. The driving position is Civic. The entire car is just Civic. It's useful, comfortable, interesting to look at, but will still look good years from now, Civic.
You could sit in here and say, is this a $50,000 car interior? Not really. It's a dressed up economy car, but it's still great. Everything falls to hand really easily. Oh, come on now. These HVAC controls feel really good.
This is better suited to wearing this kind of package than other manufacturers who have made hot sports cars out of sedans. And here it is. And then it's still so useful. Cup holders, and cubbies, and storage pockets, and it just is a nice place to be. I love the stance of the Acura Type-S. I love the fender flares. I don't mind that they look kind of tacked on. It has a very muscular stance, and you know this is a different car when you see it in traffic and you see it on the road. The front end alone, I love what Acura is doing. They have found their signature look, and that pattern on the grille, that is now very much Acura. That's their signature look. With all the power and the way this handles, and as good as this car is to drive, I like this so much because it's stealth.
Again, this one is $52,595, so just under $53,000. What do you get for your $53,000? Well, quite a few things that don't come in the Civic Type-R, which probably cost you just as much to get into. This has heated seats, that's a big one. It also has a head-up display, which is nice. It has a higher-end stereo. You also get power seats, so if you want to change your seating configuration between a couple of drivers, it's a lot easier in here. They are less aggressive, which makes them a little more usable. Of course, the same back seat space, and technically actually a little bit more cargo space.
I like the instrument panel of this. I like that Acura has stuck with the joystick vents. They're so easy to use. It's such a clean layout.
This is a nice upgrade of the Civic interior. Does it feel like it competes with the Germans charging you in the $50,000 range? I think just barely. It's pretty easy to argue that the Audi has a nicer interior overall, but this has the better dynamics, so where are you on what's important?
But the biggest thing about this interior is that it feels inviting. It feels endearing to me, and it's the quality of the materials. You touch any material in here, even though I don't like the piano black and we could get rid of this, I hope they do, they feel so solid and well built. That is what makes this truly feel like a luxury car, because people will get in and think, oh wow, this really just feels good. It doesn't feel cheap.
The interesting thing about this for me is the fact that the Type-S introduces the concept of these being luxury cars. We've driven the Type-R before and it's great and we love it, but the Type-S says you're spending more than $50,000, which unbelievably people are paying more than that for the Type-R. But you're spending more than $50,000. Can you actually get some luxury? You should at that price point, which now introduces the S3 of all things.
This is the car that Acura has benchmarked directly for this one, but I'm wondering about luxury vehicles and what a manual transmission says to a luxury car and knocks it down a peg. It can't possibly be a luxury sports sedan because it's got a manual. And manuals nowadays just say, oh, it's only an enthusiast car. But here, this is the only transmission, both the CTR and the Type-S.
It's a very good point. You're buying a luxury car that only comes in manual. That is kind of unheard of.
Does it make it luxurious enough? Are we happy with it enough as a commuter? Rev match is the game changer, by the way, and that can be turned off on either car. I've also talked for a long time about whacking the wing off the back of the Civic Type-R and making that your commuter. Like, just rip that thing off, take a Sawzall, unbolt it, whatever. Just take it off and you're good.
Good job. Good job. You actually want to do it right. Excellent.
Good news, everyone. Acura built one without the wing.
They did. It is amazing, and it actually is the more commuter-friendly car here, but it's that commuter thing, that daily thing that has me thinking about this and coming to a conclusion I'm surprised by, because the Type-R is a 4-star car. It is brilliant. It's a front-wheel drive throwdown. I can't believe how good it is to drive. However, I don't think most people are going to want to daily it. I think it is a little too hardcore, and at over $50,000, you're going to want it to be nicer when you're doing anything but being on track. So even though that is a 4-star car, and I gave the S3 3.5 stars, my rating is here at 4 stars. S3 second at 3.5, and the Type-R in third, not because it's bad, because it's brilliant, but for what we're talking about, one car, daily use, commuting, and luxury car at more than 50 grand, I can't put it anywhere but last.
You're using logic over emotion.
I'm sorry I am.
But emotion, there's so much here.
It is. It's incredible to drive.
I'm with you. I'm 4-star car on both of these, but the Golf R, I mean the Audi S3, is not doing it for me because
I know.
Where's the manual on this?
It should be.
They have it on a sister car. Where is it? And that would differentiate it in the lineup, because buy an A3, save money, get the hottest thing you possibly can in the smallest size, get the RS3. The S3 is still kind of confused about itself. These two are not, and you're right. This is track only. This is very track focused, and since I don't really have a commute, I guess this would work for me, and that's why I'm emotional about it.
You and I would make it work, but we're not most people, yeah.
Here you go, and then the S3 is last for me because I want more from it. I want it to give me something that surprises me that these two cars do for me. And despite you being right, I'm still putting the S3 last. The Golf R, whatever you call this thing.
I'm right and still wrong. It's just another day on the show.
I can't drive this and think to myself, wow, what a car. Because there's other cars that make me feel so much more. It's quite capable. It's got the power, it's got the speed, that there is no doubt. But it doesn't have the personality. So therefore, this car is great for commuting and great for high-speed road trips.
I admit, when I saw Acura call out the S3, I thought, really? Is it gonna work? Is it gonna play well? And we've liked the Golf R, but never really fallen in love with it. And this S3, I'm very impressed by. If you're intrigued by it at all, I think it is a fantastic use of around $50,000. If your usage is sitting in traffic and you need dynamic cruise control and you'd like all of the niceties sitting in traffic requires, well, I'm gonna say S3.
What a phenomenal car. And it's a Honda. And it comes with a warranty. How exciting is that? This is worth your time and your money to pursue one of these. And the Acura is not, it's not that the Acura is a second place kind of car. It just does different things than this does.
If you're looking for a track car, I don't know that this is the best choice for 50 grand. If you're looking for a daily, I don't think it's the best choice for 50 grand. So you have to buy it because you want the Type-R. And I know those people are out there and they're paying over markup. But it makes it a difficult car for me in this group. It's kind of weird. It's still a 4-star car. It's still amazing. I would own it, but I'd have a lot of other cars first. Is that weird? Maybe.
This seems like money well spent. This is a car that I want to add to my garage. And I can't say that about every car we drive, but I'm having trouble fighting this one off. Type-S. Who knew that Acura needed to bring it back? And who knew that you needed one too?
This has that ability to fade into the background and not annoy you with all of its hardcore tendencies if you just want to drive home in comfort. But yet it walks that line where it isn't boring when you do that. The fact that you're still shifting, the fact that it has a little bit of personality hidden in here, that never goes away, but it also doesn't bother you. I like this more as an all-arounder. This is the better all-arounder. Go over to Acura, buy the Type-S, enjoy it more as a daily, and don't buy the Type-R because you're doing it as an investment and it's going to sit wrapped in plastic. That's just a tragedy. No one won, not even you.
And no, we can't make a mix of all three just to make the perfect car, because a perfect car doesn't exist. Until you get into the Civic Type-R. A perfect car doesn't exist. Crap.